everyone, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 23 of Pro Wrestling's Top 50. I'm your host, Travis McNeil, and today we continue our countdown of the top 50 matches in Impact Wrestling history with match number 28 on our list, which is the empty arena match between the Motor City Machine Guns of Chris Sabin and Alex Shelley against Generation Me of Max and Jeremy Buck from the TNA Reaction episode on November the 18th of 2010. Now, I may get a little bit of flack for including this match on the list because technically it's not a match. There's no referee present. There's no bell. There's no pinfall. There's nothing of the sort. But it was advertised as a match. Therefore, I'm including it. So it's my list. I could do whatever I want. That's what I'm choosing to do. TNA Reaction was a show that I truly feel was really ahead of its time and really underappreciated. What it was, if you're unfamiliar, is it was essentially like an Impact post-game show that was done in a really unique, like, behind-the-scenes documentary style. They'd have like roving backstage cameras. It was guys, cutting promos about the night's events. It was announcing stuff for the following week. It was recapping the episode you just watched, but from a very like cinematic perspective with like different camera angles and stuff like that. It had a lot of like sports elements to it. They do like the Impact Player of the Week, and they do like a profile piece on, whoever was the standout performer on that week's Impact episode. A lot of times they would use it to kind of immediately carry over from where Impact left off. So if Impact left off with like a hot angle, you'd see the aftermath of that immediately as Reaction started. The whole effing show episode that they did in August of 2010 is a great example. At the end of that, Abyss butchered Rob Van Dam with Janice, his nail board. All of the ECW guys kind of like invade it. That carried over immediately into that episode. They'd used it to continue matches as well. There was a Kurt Angle and Jeff Hardy match that, TV time expired, and they continued it on into Reaction. But this was the one and only match that happened on Reaction. They advertised, Generation Me, who, if you're unfamiliar with them, it's the Young Bucks. That's what they were called in TNA. They had engaged in a brutal rivalry with the Motor City Machine Guns. And it led to this point where these guys just wanted to settle the score in a fight. They were going to do it, after Impact, no referees. Like I said, it was just a fight, and they promoted it as this empty arena match. And this is a really early example of the cinematic matches that would become so big, during the COVID era, right? Again, it's shot very differently. There's a lot of, trash talking and audible stuff. It's really gritty, and it's shot more movie style than a traditional match. So, I don't know if I'd call this a cinematic match, but again, it's a very early example of that. And again, it's really ahead of its time. It feels crazy to me that this was over 10 years ago, but it was 10 years before we really started seeing these matches used on, for better or for worse, on a somewhat consistent basis. This was a feud that kind of happened by accident. So Generation Me got a tryout in Impact. They worked the Guns as a dark match in very early 2010. They had a great match. They immediately ran it back on Impact. They did that a couple times. They had a lot of really fun sprints in early 2010. They did an Ultimate X match at the Destination X 2010 event. That was a lot of fun. And then that was it. Both teams kind of went their separate ways. The Motor City Machine Guns ended up winning the TNA Tag Team titles finally. And they were set for a title defense at the No Surrender event in September of 2010. I truthfully don't remember who they were supposed to be defending the titles against, but there was an injury or something along those lines, and it led to Generation Me being inserted into that match last minute. They had a killer match, and that could have been it. It could have been one and done, but what TNA did is they recognized the chemistry between these teams, and they did a post-match angle where Generation Me took Shelley out with basically like a double Hangman's DDT on the floor. That put some juice onto this feud. They had a rematch at Bound for Glory. They opened the show. A fantastic sprint. It almost made this top 50 list, but it was, a couple of matches short of hitting that list. But it's super fun. They went about 10 minutes, lots of crazy spots, good callbacks to their match the previous month. It's well worth watching. Again, the feud continued steady. They had this empty arena match, and they ended up blowing it off at the following month at the Final Resolution 2010 event in a Full Metal Mayhem match, basically a TLC match. Great feud, really under the radar, really forgotten about. And again, it was, early Young Bucks before, they were still the Young Bucks. They were doing well in PWG. They were doing well in Ring of Honor. I think they had made Chikara appearances at that point, but they weren't, the Young Bucks that we know today, right? The AEW megastars. So this was, a really good example of what brought them to prominence and just really great matches and a really great feud. This empty arena match, though, is superb. It's just so intense. It's absolutely chaotic. It's guys, whipping each other into chairs and guardrails and stairs. It's clawing and raking and choking and standing on each other's heads and whipping each other with belts. It feels really uncomfortable and physical and gritty and cool. They do a bunch of big spots in it, and it's so weird because they take all of these contrived like tag team moves that they would normally do, but they somehow make it work in the context of their fight, which I think is an admirable thing that they were able to pull off. Jeremy Buck, who's Nick Jackson, hits his slingshot, facebuster slingshot X Factor that he does, but he does it over the guardrail. Shelley hits like a double stomp off the apron. Matt Jackson tries to do like a pescado to the floor, and Shelley like throws a table in his way. There's a lot of like really brutal stuff. The finish here, the Guns hit their finishing move Skull and Bones, which is basically like a Hangman's neck breaker by Shelley, but with Chris Sabin coming off the top rope with a splash at the same time. They hit that like off the ring apron through a table on the floor. That was just wild to take out Jeremy Buck. And then they end up tying Matt Buck into the corner using the belts that they were whipping each other with. And then they just proceed to super kick him repeatedly. It's, again, really uncomfortable. They're like trash talking, Matt Jackson, like getting in his face. He's yelling at them, telling them to bring it, spitting at them. It's disgusting. And basically the Machine Guns hit a super kick party before that was ever a term, on Max Buck in the corner, and eventually lay him out with one, double super kick that basically renders him unconscious. And that's where, they end the fight and they walk away, being the victors on this occasion. This match is kind of hard to track down. TNA Reaction, one, a lot of people don't remember it, which I feel is a shame. But two, it's not available on Impact Plus or on any streaming service. That said, if you search for this match, you will be able to find it, through, streaming video platforms like YouTube or Dailymotion or one of those. So it is floating around out there, and it's very much worth the watch just to see, how the Young Bucks have evolved from this. And again, like I said, to see that very early example of a cinematic match and it be done so well. It's got all of the drama, but it's done in such a realistic way that, I'll use the Gargano and Ciampa NXT, cinematic match, their blow off to their feud as an example where that came across really hokey and forced. This was the complete opposite. It felt like four guys that just hated each other and wanted to beat each other senseless with no rules, and that's exactly what it is. I ask that you please subscribe to the channel here on YouTube so that you never miss a video as we continue our countdown. You can follow on Instagram and Twitter at Wrestling50, the word 50 spelled out, not numerical. And please join me again tomorrow as we continue to count down Pro Wrestling's Top 50.